I fed other people for 50 years, and I never once stopped to ask whether I was happy. You don't where I'm from. You get up before the light, you put the coffee on, you cook, and somewhere along the way the whole of your life goes by with a spatula in your hand. That was me. I didn't know I was lonely. I was too busy to know it. My name's Barbara. Barb, mostly. Everybody in Pikeville, Kentucky just called me Barb from behind the counter, and I answered to it for 35 years. I'm 75 now. And I'm telling you all this from a little rented place inside the old moat in a city called Chiang Mai in the north of Thailand, about as far from the hills of eastern Kentucky as a body can get and still be on the same earth. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I know. If you'd have told the woman I was 3 years ago that she'd end up here, she'd have laughed in your face and gone back to scrubbing the flat top. I was not an adventurous woman. I had never owned a passport. The farthest I'd ever been was Myrtle Beach the one time, and I spent half of it worrying about the restaurant. Let me back up and tell it right, because if you're sitting somewhere tonight feeling like the useful part of your life is behind you, like you're just running out the clock in a house that's gone quiet, then I want you to hear how it went for me. Not so you'll do what I did. Lord, I'd never tell anybody to do a fool thing like this, just so you'll know it can be different than you think. I cooked at a place called the Whitfield Family Restaurant right on Main Street up the Big Sandy from the coal camps. I wasn't the owner. I want to be honest about that. I've heard folks tell these stories and puff themselves up, and I've got no use for it. I was the cook, the one back in the heat who never got her name on anything. I ran that kitchen like a tight ship for the better part of 4 decades. Meatloaf on Tuesdays, soup, beans, and cornbread on Fridays, and a brown gravy folks would drive in from 3 counties over for. I knew every regular's order before they sat down. I knew who was sick, who'd had a baby, who'd passed. A kitchen in a small town is a kind of church if you cook long enough. People confess to you over pie. And I had Roy, 39 years, married to Roy Caudill. He went down in the mines at 19 and came up out of them at 60 with a cough that never left. And I'll tell you what nobody tells you about loving a coal miner. The mine doesn't turn loose of him when he retires. It just keeps on collecting, slow. The black lung got worse by inches. The oxygen tank showed up in the bedroom, then the second one for the living room, then the little green line of tubing running everywhere in the house, so I was forever stepping over it. I nursed that man for the last near 7 years of his life. Cooked all day, came home and cooked for him soft foods he could get down, sat up nights listening to him breathe to make sure he was still doing it. He passed 3 years ago this spring. I was 72. And here is the thing that I couldn't say to a living soul back home. So I'll say it to you, a stranger after he was gone. After all those years of caring for him, I did not feel free. Everybody kept telling me I'd feel free. I felt like somebody had reached in and scooped out my middle with a serving spoon. I'd cook for other people every day of my life, and all at once there was not one single person left in that house to cook for. I'd stand in my kitchen at 5 in the evening, the hour I'd been cooking supper my whole life, and I'd just stand there. Nothing to do with my hands. I made a pot of soup beans about a week after the funeral, out of pure habit, enough to feed a shift. Then I sat and looked at it. A whole pot, and just me. I ate 2 bowls so it wouldn't be a waste, and I put the rest in the freezer and I cried. Not for Roy exactly, though for him too, but for the beans. For a pot of beans nobody was coming to eat. That's a grief they don't put in the cards people send you. The restaurant I'd left the year Roy got real bad, so I didn't even have my kitchen. I had a paid-off house, a freezer full of food for a family I no longer had, and more years ahead of me most likely than I knew what on earth to do with. 72 years old, healthy as a mule, which felt like a cruel joke. My daddy died at 59 and my Roy at 70, and here I was strong as ever, with nobody to be strong for. That's where a lot of stories like mine just stop, isn't it? The woman gets old and quiet in the empty house, and that's the end of it. That's what I figured too. I figured wrong. But I want you to sit in that quiet with me for a minute first, because you can't understand the rest of it. The market at dawn, the man who taught me to make my own curry paste, the whole second life of me, unless you understand the exact size and shape of the hole I was standing in. It was the shape of a pot of beans nobody came home to eat. Let me tell you how I climbed out of it. Here's the thing nobody warns you about. Sometimes the money shows up right when it stops, meaning anything. Roy had a little life insurance through the union, more than I expected, and there was his miner's pension that turned into a widow's benefit, and then the house and the bit of land it sat on. When the dust settled, I had a little over $200,000 to my name and about $2,100 coming in every month between my Social Security and Roy's, since a widow draws off whichever check is bigger, and his was bigger. I had never in my life had money like that. We'd raised our boy on a cook's wages and a miner's wages, and there was never a nickel left over at the end of any month I can recall. And I'd have set fire to every dollar of it in the yard to have one more ordinary Tuesday with that man. I mean that plain. The money sat in the bank and I couldn't feel it. Money's only good for what you do with it and who you do it for, and I didn't have a who anymore. I want to say clear, because I know how these stories go. I did not leave because I was broke. I wasn't. If anything, the money is what made people think I'd gone soft in the head, spending it the way I did. I left because I was disappearing. There's a difference between being poor and being empty, and I'd have taken poor and full any day of the week. My boy Denver, he lives out in Ohio with his wife and my 2 grandbabies. Well, they're near grown now, 16 and 13. Not babies at all except in my mind. He was good to me. Called every Sunday. But he had his own life the way they do, and my sister Wanda was the only one close, and Wanda and I love each other to death and can't be in a room past 2 hours without fussing. So my days had gotten to be the television and the church women checking on me like I was a casserole that might go off, and the long evenings, the thing that started it, and I laugh now at how small it was. I couldn't sleep. I was up at 3 in the morning most nights, and I'd sit with my granddaughter's old laptop she'd left at my place, poking at videos. And one of those nights the machine, in its wisdom, played me a video of a market. A morning market in Chiang Mai, Thailand, a place called Warorat. Now understand, I am a cook, 50 years a cook. And I have looked at 1,000 pretty travel pictures in my life and felt nothing. But this was a working market before dawn, and I knew it in my bones the way you know your own kitchen in the dark. Grandmothers with cleavers going a mile a minute, pyramids of chilies, red and green, mounded up like they were free. Great bunches of herbs I couldn't name, and pork on charcoal, and a woman ladling some golden curdy-looking noodle soup into bowls fast as she could take the money. Steam coming up off everything in the cool of the morning. And I felt something turn over in my chest that I hadn't felt since before Roy got sick. I wanted to be in that market, not to see it, to work in it. To stick my hands in it and find out what that golden soup was and how she got the noodles crispy on the top and soft underneath. I sat there at 3 in the morning in Pikeville, Kentucky, an old woman in a housecoat, and I felt hungry for the first time in about 2 years. Hungry to be somewhere. Hungry to be somebody with something to do at 5 in the evening. I watched market videos every night for a month, then cost of living videos. Then a whole rabbit hole of gray-haired Americans, plain-spoken ones, not braggarts, telling how they lived over there for less than they'd spent being miserable back home. The exchange was about 33 baht, that's their money to the dollar. I did the arithmetic on the back of an envelope the way I used to do a food order, and I did it 3 times because I didn't believe it. Folks were living decent on what I was already getting from Social Security alone, and I had the house money besides, just sitting. I told Wanda I was thinking about taking a trip to Thailand. She set her coffee cup down real slow, the way she does before she says something she thinks is wise. "Barbara," she said, "you've never been past Knoxville by yourself. You're 73 years old. They've got scammers over there that prey on lonesome widow women. You'll be robbed and left in a ditch." "Well," I said, "I'm being left in a ditch right here, Wanda. It's just a slower ditch." She didn't have an answer for that. Denver was gentler about it, but I could hear the worry. Was I being foolish? Was somebody in my ear? Was I well? I told him the truth, which was that I didn't know if it was foolish. I just knew that when I watched that market I felt alive. And I hadn't felt alive in a long time. And at my age I couldn't afford to be choosy about where the aliveness came from. I booked a 3-week trip. Round trip, mind you, I wasn't a lunatic. Just 3 weeks to go see if the golden soup was real. It was the bravest thing I'd done in my life, and I did it terrified, and I'd do it again tomorrow. I'll not lie to you about the first day. The first day near sent me home. It's a long way. You fly, and then you fly some more. And when I finally walked out of the Chiang Mai airport at near midnight, 73 years old and swole up like a tick from all those hours sitting, the heat hit me like opening an oven door. Wet heat. February, and it was hotter than a Kentucky August. I got in a little red truck, they call them song thieves. It's a pickup with 2 benches in the back, and you climb in and hang on, and I white-knuckled it to the guest house, and I lay on a strange bed under a ceiling fan, and I thought, "Barbara Caudill, you have made a terrible mistake, and it's cost you a fortune, and you're too old and too dumb to be here." I cried a little. Then I slept about 10 hours, which I hadn't done in years, and I woke up before dawn out of pure lifelong habit, and I thought, well, I came all this way. I'll at least go find that market before I fly home in disgrace. Warorot Market. Cad Luang, the locals call it. I walked in a little after 6 in the morning, and I have not been the same person since. It was the video, and it was 1,000 times more than the video. The smell hit first charcoal and lemongrass and something frying, and the green cut grass smell of a mountain of herbs, and under it all the river close by. Women my age and older, tiny and quick, running knives I'd have been proud to own. I stood in the middle of it like a girl on her first day. Nobody paid me any mind, which was its own kind of wonderful. Back home I was poor Barb, lost her Roy. Here I was, just another gray head in the way of the cart. I found the golden soup. Cow soy, it's called. A curry broth, coconut rich, with soft egg noodles down in it, and a nest of crispy fried ones on top. A piece of chicken, lime and pickled greens, and a spoon of chili paste on the side. The woman ladling it was about my age, with a face like a walnut and hands that never stopped. I pointed. I couldn't say one word of the language, not one, and I want to be honest that the language over there is genuinely hard. It's got tones. The same sound 5 ways means 5 things, and any fool who tells you everybody speaks English is selling you something. She didn't. I didn't. We got on fine with pointing and smiling. She handed me the bowl and held up her fingers. 60 baht, not even $2. I sat on a little plastic stool built for somebody a third my size, and I took a bite of that cow swai, and I'm not ashamed to tell you my eyes welled up right there over the bowl. Because it was perfect. It was balanced the way I'd spent 50 years trying to teach young cooks to balance a thing, the fat and the sour and the salt and the heat all pulling at each other and none of them winning. Somebody's grandmother had made that paste from scratch that morning. I could taste the work in it. And I thought about my brown gravy that people drove 3 counties for, and I understood, sitting on that little stool, that I had found my people, cooks. On the other side of the world, speaking not a word I knew, but my people all the same. I ate there every morning for a week. By the third day, the walnut-faced woman, whose name I learned was Pen, had my bowl going. Before I sat down, she'd remembered my order. And if you've ever cooked for a living, you know that's the highest love a cook can give. I started pointing at things and miming, "How do you make this?" And she'd laugh and pull me around behind and show me, "This paste, these roots, you pound it here." I learned to say "Sawadee-ka," that's hello, and "Kap-kun-ka," thank you, and I said them so bad and so proud. And in the evenings I did the other thing I'd come to do, which was the arithmetic. I sat with my little notebook like I was doing a food cost. A clean room in a decent part of the old city, the part inside the old moat, was running about 15 or 16,000 baht a month, call it $485. I could eat like a queen, 3 meals of the best food I'd had in my life, for a handful of dollars a day, and cheaper still if I cooked, and I meant to cook. A doctor's visit, I asked around, was maybe $40, cash, no insurance fight, no waiting 3 weeks for an appointment. I added it up and added it again. I could live here, really live, comfortable air conditioning and good food, and a little left over on about 50,000 baht a month, $1,500. And I had 2,100 coming in without touching a dime of the house money. The arithmetic didn't lie. It never does. 3 weeks I'd booked. Somewhere in that second week, standing in Pen's little stall with chili paste under my nails, I quit thinking of it as a trip. Deciding to stay and being allowed to stay are two different animals, and I'm a woman who reads the fine print, so let me tell you how I did it honest and legal, because that part matters and the videos gloss right over it. I flew home after the 3 weeks. I want to be clear, I didn't just run off. I went back to Pikeville and I sat with it for a month to make sure it wasn't a fever, and it wasn't. The house was quieter and emptier than ever after I'd tasted the other thing. So I did it properly. I talked to Denver face to face. I expected a fight. What I got was my boy looking at me a long minute and saying, "Mom, you look more like yourself on the phone from over there than you have since Dad got sick." And his eyes went red, and mine did too, and that was his blessing, more or less. For the visa, and this is the part to get right if you're my age, I did not do the one everybody talks about, the OA retirement visa you get from home. Here's why, and pay attention because it's the whole ball game at 75. That one makes you carry Thai health insurance, and at my age, that insurance is either flat unavailable or it costs the moon. So instead, I did what the sensible old-timers over there do. I came in and did the conversion inside the country, the non-O, which doesn't chain you to that insurance rule. To show the money, I parked 800,000 baht, that's around $24,000 in a Thai bank account, and let it season there the couple of months they require. My Social Security by itself would have qualified me the income way, over 65,000 baht a month, but the deposit was simpler and I had it. Then there's the keeping up of it. Every 90 days you report your address to immigration. They call it the 90-day report. And there's a thing called a TM30, your landlord files saying where you live, and once a year you renew about 1,900 baht, and if you leave the country you get a re-entry permit first, or your whole visa dies at the airport, which is a rookie heartbreak I made sure never to have. It's paperwork. I ran a restaurant kitchen through 30 years of health inspections. Paperwork doesn't scare me. It's just a different clipboard. Now the health care, because you deserve the honest version, and this is where being 75 is a real thing and not a slogan. I am on Medicare, like every American past 65. And Medicare does not cover you 1 inch outside the United States. Not here, not anywhere. So I had a decision to make, and I made it with my eyes open. I kept paying my Medicare Part B, a little over $200 a month, so that door home stays open. If something big and bad ever happens to me, I can get on a plane and be covered back in the States. And for everything day to day over here, I just pay cash, because it's so cheap it's almost funny. A doctor for $40. And the big private hospitals here, Chiang Mai Ram, Bangkok Hospital, they're clean and modern and a fraction of home. I could not buy private insurance to cover the catastrophes over here. Not really, not at 75, not without it costing more than it's worth, and turning down my old lady body besides. So I don't pretend to. My insurance is that $200,000 of house money sitting in the bank, untouched, and that Part B card and a plane ticket. That's the honest arrangement. Anybody selling you a neater one at my age is lying. You self-fund the little stuff, which is nothing here, and you keep a real cushion and a way home for the big stuff. I sleep fine on it. I found my place, a one-bedroom on a quiet lane, a swa they call it, tucked back inside the old moat where I could walk to Wat Phra Singh and hear the temple bells and the monks in the morning. 16,000 baht a month, right at $485. When I totted up the whole life rent, the electric and the air running, food, a little for getting around, the phone, a good chunk set aside every month toward my own health fund, and some for the temple and this and that, it came to about 50,000 baht, $1,500, near enough, against 2,100 coming in. I live on about 2/3 of what I get, and the rest just quietly piles up, and I have never once touched the house money. For a woman who counted every nickel her whole life, that math is a kind of peace I can't fully describe to you. The day I signed the lease, I unpacked my one big suitcase. I didn't ship much, what does a body need? But I'd brought the one picture of Roy in his good shirt, the one from before the mines took his breath, and I set it on the little shelf by the window where the morning light comes in. "Well, Roy," I said out loud, feeling like a fool and not caring, "here we are. You always said I never sat still. Watch me now. Now don't let me paint it like it all came up roses, because it didn't, and I promised you honest. The first few months, once the newness wore off, were hard in a way I didn't see coming. The problem with me is I'm a cook with nobody to cook for, and that hole had followed me halfway around the planet. I'd make a pot of something in my little kitchen. I couldn't help it. I don't know how to make a small amount of anything. 50 years of cooking for a crowd is in my hands. And there I'd be again, an old woman looking at too much food and an empty table. Same pot of beans, different country. I had days I sat on my bed and thought, you ran off across the whole world and you brought your loneliness right along in the carry-on. There was one night I near broke. I'd had a bad day, everything gone sideways. Couldn't make myself understood at the pharmacy. Missed Denver and the grandbaby so bad it was like a toothache. Missed Wanda's fussing even. I got my phone out and I had the flight home half booked, my thumb right over the button. And I sat with it a long time. Then I put the phone down and I made myself a cup of tea, and I thought, and go home to what, Barbara? The quiet house. The freezer beans. You're not homesick for a place. You're homesick for a time, and that time's gone. And it's gone in Kentucky too. That didn't fix the ache, but it kept my thumb off the button. The language wore on me. Every single day, some small wall. You get tired of being the dumbest person in the room, of pointing and smiling like a big overgrown child. It's humbling, and humbling's good for the soul, but it's still hard on a proud woman. And then came the smoke. And I have to tell you about the smoke, because it's the honest, ugly part of Chiang Mai, and it nearly did me in, and it cut me deeper than most for a reason. From about February into April, the farmers all through the north burn their fields, and the whole valley fills up with a haze you can taste. The mountain that's right there, Doi Sutep, with the temple up top that you can see from town on a clear day. Some mornings you couldn't see it at all. The air quality gets to be some of the worst on the whole earth for a few weeks. My eyes ran. My chest got tight. And here is why it hit me the way it did. I nursed a man to death over his lungs. I spent 7 years watching Roy fight for breath that wouldn't come, hauling those oxygen tanks. And now here I sat in a smoke that made my own chest ache. And I'll tell you, I sobbed about it one bad afternoon, sitting in front of the air machine I'd bought, with a mask on my face, feeling like the mine had reached all the way across the ocean to find me. That was my lowest hour here. I won't dress it up, but I'll tell you what a body learns. You learn the burning season the way you learn any hard weather. You buy the good air filter for the bedroom. You wear the mask on the bad days, and you check the number every morning like folks back home check the pollen. And when it gets truly wicked, for a couple weeks in March, I've learned to just go down to the coast or over to a cleaner spot and let it pass. It costs a little of the surplus, and it's worth every baht. Roy would have wanted me breathing. That's not paradise. I told you it wouldn't be. But it's a hard thing you manage, not a hard thing that beats you, and there's a world of difference between those two. And in amongst all that hardness, the small good things had quietly started. Pen at the market had me for a fixture now. She'd started teaching me for real, dragging me behind the stall. This root, that leaf, no, pound it longer. A neighbor lady on my swa, Aoi, started leaving little dishes on my step, and I'd leave some of my 2 big pots back on hers, and we couldn't hardly talk, but we could feed each other, and let me tell you, feeding each other is a whole language of its own, and I was fluent in it. And there was a man at the market, a quiet man about my own age who ran a little noodle stand near Penn's, though his daughter mostly ran it now. He was half retired, a widower, folks said, lost his wife some years back. Somsak, his name was. He'd watched me butcher the language and butcher a papaya for weeks, and one morning he came over, and in careful, slow English he'd clearly been practicing, he said, "You cook. I see it in the hand." And he pointed at my hands. And after a lifetime of nobody seeing the cook back in the heat, I about came undone that a stranger in Thailand had looked at my hands and known exactly what I was. I want to tell you about Somsak careful, because it's the tenderest thing I've got, and I've heard how the world talks about old foreign women and men over here. And it's not that, and I'll not have it be mistaken for that. Somsak is 74 years old, a year younger than me, which I tease him about. He ran a noodle shop in Chiang Mai for 40 years, same as I ran my kitchen, and his wife passed 6 years back, same as I lost Roy, and he has his own grown children and his own little pension and his own house that he raised his family in. He never wanted a thing from me, and I never wanted a thing from him but the company. We are 2 old cooks who each buried the person they loved, and each thought that was the end of that chapter of being loved. That's the whole of it. Nobody's rescuing anybody. We split the check. It started with cooking, because of course it did. He offered to show me how to make a proper curry paste, the real way, in the big stone mortar, and I offered to show him what a Kentucky biscuit is. And Lord, watching that man's face the first time he ate a biscuit with sorghum on it, you'd have thought I'd handed him the moon. We started spending our mornings at the market together and our evenings in one kitchen or the other, cooking things and arguing happily about them. He taught me the words I couldn't get from a book. I taught him that gravy is not a sauce, it's a birthright. We laughed. I hadn't laughed daily in years and years. And I'll be truthful, because you've been good enough to listen, it scared me half to death. The first time I understood I had feelings for him, real ones, I felt like I was cheating on Roy. I'd lie awake ashamed of it. I actually said it out loud to Roy's picture on the shelf, apologized to it. And then one evening Somsak, who is a wiser soul than me, saw something on my face, and he said, slow and careful, "Loving me does not unlove him. The heart is not one bowl. It is a market, many stalls. A market, many stalls." From a noodle man. I've thought about that near every day since. That's the lesson I'd carry out of this whole business, If I could only keep one that loving somebody new late in life is not a betrayal of the one you lost. It's the proof of how well they taught you to love. Roy made me a woman who knows how to love a person day in and day out over a lifetime. It'd be a poor thanks to him to lock that away in a box. So I stopped apologizing to the picture. I talk to it still, but friendly now. I tell Roy about my day. I think he'd have liked Somsak. 2 stubborn old men who worked with their hands. They'd have gotten on. It's built me a whole life, this. On the November full moon, there's Loy Krathong, where the whole city floats little banana leaf boats with a candle and a flower down the Ping River and sends up paper lanterns till the sky's full of them. And Somsak and I and Pen and I made our little Krathongs, and I set mine on the water and I sent it off for Roy. Watched the little candle bob away down river, and I wasn't sad exactly, I was full. There's a Thai way of saying it, Jayen, a cool heart, and I finally understood it that night. Denver came and visited last year, brought my granddaughter. I was so nervous for them to meet Somsak I burnt the rice, and I never burn rice. But my boy watched us 2 old cooks bicker over the pot, and he took me aside on the balcony and he said, "Mom, he's good, and you're happy." That's all I wanted to see. My granddaughter fell in love with the market and cried at the airport, but the good kind. Wanda still tells the church women I've lost my mind, and we still fuss on our video calls, and I wouldn't have her any other way. The healthcare's been real and manageable, too, since I said I'd tell you honest. I took a fall on a wet market floor last year and cracked a bone in my wrist, and Somsak had me to Chiang Mai Ram in 20 minutes, and they x-rayed and set it and treated me like I was the Queen of England, and the whole business cost me less out of pocket than a fancy dinner would back home. For the little yearly things, I just pay my $40 cash, and I'm seen that same day. I keep my health fund fed every month, and my Part B paid, and my plane ticket plan in my back pocket for anything big. That's the arrangement, same as I laid it out for you before, and it's held up. It's not a fairy tale, it's just a sensible old woman's plan, and it works. So here I am, 75 years old, 2 years into this second life, sitting by my window in the old city, with the morning light coming in on Roy's picture, and a pot of something. I shouldn't have made this much of cooling on the stove, except now there's always somebody coming to eat it. Let me tell you what a Tuesday looks like now, since a Tuesday used to be the loneliest day of my week. I'm up before the light, same as 50 years of mornings, but now I walk down to Worarat in the cool while the monks are out with their bowls, and the vendors are just setting up. Pen has my cow soy going before I've found my stool. Somsak meets me, and we argue over what's freshest. He thinks he knows fish better than me, and he's right, and I'll never tell him so. We haul it all back and cook the afternoon away, and Aoi comes over, and half the time my granddaughter rings in on the little screen and watches us and laughs. Then the temple bells go of an evening, and I sit out on the step with a full belly and a cool heart. That's a Tuesday. I used to dread Tuesdays. Now I'd not trade one of them for anything I left behind. Let me give you the lessons, since that's what I said I'd do, and they cost me enough to earn the right to hand them to you. The first one is about courage, and it's this. It is not too late. It was not too late at 70. 3, and it will not be too late at whatever age you are, sitting there thinking it's too late. Now, hear the honest part. I'm not telling you to move to Thailand. Most folks shouldn't and won't. I'm telling you, the aliveness I thought was behind me was just waiting on the other side of one terrifying thing I almost didn't do. Whatever your terrifying thing is, it's probably not this. But it's out there and you're not too old for it. And the fear is not a stop sign. The fear is just the toll. The second lesson is about money. And it surprised me. I came here half thinking it was about money, because the arithmetic was what gave me the nerve. And the money's real. I live good on about $1,500 a month against my $2,100, and I've never touched the house money, and there's a peace in that. But it turns out the money was never the thing. The thing was having a reason to get up. You can be broke and full or rich and empty, and I've now been 3 of those 4, and I promise you full beats rich every single day. The third lesson is about loneliness. Loneliness isn't cured by other people being nearby. I had a whole town nearby, and I was drowning. It's cured by being needed, by having your hands in something, by somebody remembering your order. Find the thing that needs your hands. Mine was always a kitchen. I just had to cross the world to find one that would have me. And the last lesson is the one about love, and I've said most of it already, but I'll say it plain one more time. Loving somebody new does not unlove the one you buried. The heart's a market, many stalls. If life is kind enough to hand you a second spring at 74 years old, a quiet good man to argue about curry with, a pen, an owie, a whole second family that feeds you back, you take it. You don't make the ones who loved you first jealous by refusing it. You honor them by loving again as well as they taught you. It is not paradise. I miss my grandbabies with a physical ache. I miss my sister's fussing. Every February the smoke comes and I have to run from it, and I never forget why that smoke frightens me. And I know, being honest, that one of these years my strong mule body will finally quit on me, and I've made my plans for that day, a plane and a cushion and a card. I don't hide from any of it. But I wake up curious. I have work for my hands and a table that fills up, and a man who saw a cook in my fingers from across a market at 75, after I'd counted myself finished. If that's not a life worth crossing the world for, I don't know what would be. Before I let you go, one thing. If any of this stirred something in you, if you've got that same quiet itch I had at 3 in the morning, or wondering if the numbers could ever work for somebody like you, there's a free tool down in the description worth a look. The Honest Thailand Retirement Starter Kit, they call it. I didn't make it, and I'm not selling you one thing. It's just a plain honest self-check that'll tell you straight whether a move like this is even worth your while. It's as ready to talk you out of it as into it. And a worksheet where you run your own real numbers, city by city, the way I ran mine on the back of an envelope. It costs you nothing, and if it tells you to stay right where you're planted, well, that's an honest answer too, and a good one. That's all I've got for you. Go on now, and take care of yourself. Supper's about ready here.